President Trump is set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today. They're expected to discuss the war in Gaza as the president tries to broker a peace deal. ABC News chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell and ABC News contributor, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy, have more on that. So, Ian, what are Netanyahu's goals with this trip to the White House?
Yeah, I don't think it's just Netanyahu who has goals. I think President Trump does, his team does, as do many other people. There's quite a lot riding on this. Remember that President Trump only a couple of days ago predicted an imminent end to the war, saying there is going to be peace. Now, two sources familiar with the matter telling us that Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's special envoy, met together with Netanyahu and his team over the weekend. They had two very long meetings in as many days to discuss what President Trump's put on the table, which is this 21-point Gaza ceasefire proposal. Of course, it's not the only proposal on the table. The Saudis, the French, Arab and Muslim leaders, as well as Britain's former Prime Minister Tony Blair, have all come up with different ideas on how you resolve this and how you move forward. Netanyahu telling Fox News that the Trump plan isn't finalised, and as you suggest, the devil will be in the detail here. I think key things for Israel: do its troops continue to maintain any kind of presence on the ground? What is the timeline? And also, what happens to Hamas? Everyone seems to be talking about Hamas laying down its weapons and potentially being allowed to leave Gaza. Well, Hamas, who obviously get a say in this, haven't indicated that they're prepared to do either of those things. So, despite the warm words of optimism, I think we still need to be cautious.
Mick, how significant is it that President Trump is welcoming Netanyahu to the White House? Does that in and of itself send a message?
Dan, I think it does. I think it's a very comprehensive plan that people put a lot of thought into. It does, if followed in a place that's both beneficial to Israel and to the people of Gaza, and to the region. It does a lot to stabilize the region. That devil is in the details for sure, and there's a lot to be worked out. But I do think, to the point of your question, that the president wanted to see Prime Minister Netanyahu in the Oval Office so he could look directly at him and really talk about how important it is to agree to this plan, or at least a version of this plan, because it is in the benefit of all parties.
Ian, what are you watching for in these negotiations in terms of Netanyahu? Is he going into this willing to make any known concessions?
It's a very good question. I mean, Netanyahu is something of an expert at stalling U.S. administrations. He's certainly successfully stalled the Biden administration. It's been a bit harder for him with President Trump at the White House, but nevertheless, we've heard President Trump issue these words of optimism more than once now, and a lot of that's predicated on conversations he has with Netanyahu. In other words, Netanyahu is perfectly capable of telling President Trump what he wants to hear while continuing to persecute the war and achieve not just what he wants, but politically what he thinks that he needs. So I think we really do need to look at the details, not just the warm words, not just the pronouncements, but show us the details of any actual plan and what it is that you've actually agreed to. But for the people of Gaza, it can't come soon enough. Diane, over 150 people dying over the weekend, according to the Hamas Foreign Health Ministry, more than 20 today. On the ground, the war is as active as ever.
Mick, what are the next steps, depending on how this meeting goes?
So, Diane, if it is agreed to, then a lot of things need to start happening at once. If the IDF is going to start pulling out of the major population centers and eventually out of Gaza, there needs to be some kind of security and stabilization force to take its place. There has been discussions of Indonesian forces supported by some Arab forces. They need to be trained. It's not just enough to be a soldier. You have to be trained in peacekeeping. You have to be trained in cultural awareness and education. There's a lot of things that need to be happening to make this plan go into effect. At the same time, there also needs to be a big discussion on how they're going to go about reconstruction eventually when that happens. That can't wait into the phase when that happens, though. They need to start getting those funds together.
All right, Ian Pannell, Mick Mulroy, thank you both.